Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I'm Cameron Reigle.
And as I've mentioned a few times over the last couple of episodes, we have been getting so many calls on the DK Vine hotline as of late at 1-202-630-VINE. That is 8463. Of course, the reveal of Donkey Kong Bananza kind of exploded the Donkey Kong fandom, just pulling people back in a way that we really haven't seen in several years. And a lot of people wanted to, I guess, call the hotline because, I mean, what do you do? What do you do when you're excited about Donkey Kong? One of the things you can do is call our hotline that's always open and just get out your little bit of word vomit that you just have to get out because you can't just bottle it up or else you'll explode. So literally just under 4 minutes from the end of the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, we started receiving calls.
I'm honestly surprised it wasn't sooner.
I know. I think everybody was still processing and reeling, and it didn't take long, and from there, it was just, oh my god, April 2nd, the hotline would not stop ringing. And like I said, I appreciate it. I love it. It's a lovely thing to see, but we've been getting too many. And back on the Donkey Kong Bananza Hype Cycle Begins episode of the Kongversation, which I fully intended to take calls on that one, I then looked into how many calls we had actually received up until that point, and it was a little over 50. And I just basically noped out. I said, no, I can't even begin to sift through these. What we will do is we will save these. Not all of them, but we will save them for a future Donkey Kong Bananza callsack episode, specifically for this early era of the hype cycle. Most of these are either listener enthusiasm calls, they are questions about the game, they are concerns about the game, or they're theories about Bananza. And here we are, Cameron and I are recording this on April 21st, just a few days before Switch 2 pre-orders open in the Americas. So this is still early days, right? And so a lot of these are kind of snapshots in time. And don't worry, Cameron, we're not going to play over 50 calls on this one. I actually went I went through them. I didn't listen to the full thing. I just basically got a gist, and I get a rough transcription too from the service, so it's never completely accurate, but I know where the calls are going from the first maybe 20 to 30 seconds of it. And I weeded through them because a lot of these calls too were just doubling or tripling up on the same questions or thoughts, and it would get very, very repetitive. And because this has been a roller coaster of emotions, hitherto unseen since maybe Tropical Freeze, some people initially called in quite negative about their feelings towards Bananza, and then they would call back maybe 12 hours later or a day later, maybe after, say, the Cranky Kong reveal, and then they were like, well, hold on, okay, I might be on board with this now. And so I didn't want to just do this kind of gotcha thing where like I put people on the spot and then play their call later where they, come to terms with it. But I thought it would be interesting to have a diverse kind of selection of calls that we're going to play and respond to. And so some of these are like very, very of the moment when they called, and some of these are more reflective as the feelings and, I guess, opinions have kind of crystallized since that initial trailer. So I've whittled this down to 16 calls. 16 down from something like 54. So if I have not played your call in this episode, don't feel too bad. It was nothing personal. It was just, I tried to get a diverse group in there. Now, this is the Bonanza hype cycle call sack, but there are obviously going to be plenty more Bonanza episodes between now and through its release across the entire duration of Stinky Ape Summer, I would say. So just because you didn't get a call in, or maybe your call wasn't selected, don't think this is the last opportunity you had. All right. Obviously, Bonanza is going to be the hot topic here on the Kongversation for many, many months. So keep that in mind. And you know what? Let's just sit back and enjoy this episode. This is kind of a low effort episode for the host because we don't have to really craft too much in the way of our own show notes. So this is kind of a nice breather for us as well. So I hope you'll allow the indulgence. But hello to our live stream. We do live stream episodes of the Kongversation for our $5 and up patrons at dkavine.com/Patreon. And we got March Rose, the Snake Fighter 64 in there right now. We'll keep checking in. We're doing this on a Monday morning. We're doing this the Monday after the Passover, Easter kind of holiday week. So it's kind of an unusual time for us to be doing this. We usually do Kongversation recordings mid-afternoon or late at night. So this is kind of more corporate conversation, a conversation befitting somebody wearing a necktie, but maybe not the mining overalls that we see and are now quite familiar with Donkey Kong adorning. All right, Cameron, you ready for this?
As ready as I'll ever be.
All right, let's play our first caller. This one came in. This is the one I mentioned. I'm playing this for historical purposes. This is the one we got a little under 4 minutes from the end of the Nintendo Direct.
Hey, this is Crawlnax. You mispronounced it before, but that's okay. Crawlnax is a made-up term. But I want to call after the Direct. I've called a few times, but you might remember me as being like the kid who grew up with Tropical Freeze, and I mentioned that during Tropical Freeze's anniversary conversation, which means that I've been waiting for this game for about half of my life, and it's finally here. And I just don't know what to say. It looks amazing. It looks weird. It looks weird in a sort of traditional Nintendo way, which I'm excited about. It's kind of breaking from like the regular Donkey Kong Country aesthetics, but I think we'll probably be okay with it. We saw Donkey Kong with the ostrich, so they're probably going to lean into some of the rare history. I assume we're going to see new revamped takes on Animal Buddies, and they're going to get a tsunami of calls, but I'll leave it there. It looks amazing, and I wonder if we'll get K. Rool in this art style. There's so much to think about over the next 3 months, and it's coming in July. It's just a couple of months, so very exciting.
Well, thank you for the call. Sorry for mispronouncing your name whenever we did that. I try my best to not mispronounce names, but it is a very precarious minefield when you're answering calls, because the audio fidelity of the calls in and of themselves is quite poorer than, you know, your standard microphone these days. So
Honestly, impressively concise and put together for a call 4 minutes after the Direct. I'm impressed.
Yeah. 4 minutes after the Direct, I was still reeling. I couldn't even make a post on social media because I was just kind of slack-jawed trying to process my new reality.
I can tell you, like, the live reaction from the Idaho crew, I feel like we didn't really talk about the game very much after that trailer because we all just kind of, like, shut down.
Yeah.
Not to indicate, like, a negative or positive reaction because we all had, like, differing reactions in the moment, but just, like, where do you start?
Exactly. And I've talked about my own kind of trailer fugue whenever I have a trailer for a game series that's near and dear to my heart, which of course only applies to the DKU, but they're kind of on a gradient too. So Donkey Kong is my most like complete fugue-like state. Whenever I see a Donkey Kong trailer, I don't know how to process it. Obviously, there's things like Returns HD where I know what I'm seeing, so it's not really bewildering to me. But I remember Bonanza and then Tropical Freeze before it, I was just unable to really understand what I was seeing. I remember even thinking Tropical Freeze, is this a Wii U game? Or what is this? What am I seeing? Jelly cubes?
Yeah.
What?
I think this more, like, we've had things to get excited about like this before. For more information, see our reaction video for the Banjo-Kazooie review on Smash. But
Yeah.
this was a different one for me because I feel like it's one of the few times I've been in the history of me being active in the online fandom space where this is not really another one of something. It's not another Smash character reveal. It's not even like another Donkey Kong Country. It's another, like, the closest thing I'd say is it's another 3D Donkey Kong, but the last time we had one of those was in 1999, and it's obviously not even remotely the same.
I would say, one of the things I'm kind of taking away from everything I've seen of Bonanza so far, obviously it's doing its own thing, right? And it's Nintendo EPD, EPT Tokyo, maybe. Like, I'm not willing to wade into those waters, like, because we don't know exactly the breakdown. There's some Odyssey overlap, of course, but we're not quite clear on how they've really, like, gone about delegating this game and maybe Donkey Kong's future. But I do think that this carries a lot of affection and tributes to DK64. It's not going to be DK64 2, because I don't think anybody but the most ardent DK64 fan would want that. But
oh yeah, it's absolutely informed by DK64 and, like, respects what DK64 is, but I think it also acknowledges you're not gonna just paste in a gameplay formula from 1999 that was controversial back when it came out.
Yeah, but it does very much feel like it's knowingly following in DK64's footsteps, all 10 of those footsteps. I think that, like, all the little...
I mean, Oh Banana is pretty indisputable.
all the nods to DK64, the Oh Banana, but also, like, cranky references to the DK rap. And I think it is kind of saying, yes, this is the next one. Finally, after 25 years, this is the next DK 3D adventure. So it does feel, in a way I didn't really expect, it does feel like it's following a lineage more so than, say, Jungle Beat followed a lineage. So it's still early days, as I said, and there's still a lot of stuff to process. But yeah, like, to this call, yeah, well composed, and yeah, you're right, we did get so many calls after yours. So let's keep going. Snake Fighter 64 says, Hyle, please tell me to get back to work or I'm fired. Well, I would never do that because I stick my thumb in the eye of all rigid corporate structures, hence why I'm a independent Donkey Kong journalist. But you don't get fired on our account. Like, do what you have to do.
Listen responsibly.
Yes. All right, let's play our second call.
Hi, Hyle and Conversation listeners. This is Thomas, the Kremlin campaigner. Can you dig it? Yeah, all jokes aside, wow, that was the sort of direct reaction I have been waiting for, bottled up for over 10 years at this point. A lot of conflicting emotions after viewing the Donkey Kong Bananza trailer now 3 times, 4 times. I don't know. This is like a tough one. This is basically a Mario Odyssey-ified version of a 3D Donkey Kong. First 3D Donkey Kong game since 1999. Absolutely nothing to sneeze at there. The lack of any returning characters is, of course, on the tip of everybody's tongue, as is Jungle Beat. To some degree, not unexpected given who's developing this. But, as the guy who was behind the K. Rool campaign since, 2012, 2011, whatever it may have been, this is the sort of moment that I imagined in my mind's eye as like a hypothetical. Some Donkey Kong game would come out down the road in new development hands, and I don't want to write K. Rool out preemptively. I think there's a potential chance they're saving him and all of the rest of the rare cast for a future reveal to some other trailer. But now he is immortalized in the Kingmaker, Smash Bros. Ultimate. From this point onwards, every single Donkey Kong game where he is not present in some capacity, they're going to have to be called to account on that. People are going to flock to Twitter, X, Blue Sky, whatever the hell it may be, and say, where is K. Rool? And, there's a respectful way to do that, and, let your voices be known on that. Not to, downplay the amazing game. It's coming out this year, this summer. God, I'm going to not see like a drop of sunlight or whatever. But yeah, looking forward to hearing your emotions and your thoughts on this. And yeah, what a ride this will be.
Well, thank you for the call, Thomas from Off of Kremlin Campaigner. This is obviously one of the sticking points of Bananza thus far in the discourse of the community, and I understand it completely. Like, both you and I, Cameron, we have been upfront about our own kind of journey with this game, from the initial excitement of the trailer, oh my god, Donkey Kong, to then the, like, halfway through the trailer, you're like, I'm not seeing anything I recognize. Uh-oh. And then you fall back on the kind of psychic turmoil of the fandom in years and decades past.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you're so excited about it. And, of course, with age comes wisdom. And, it comes the perspective that you maybe lacked when something like Jungle Beat initially came out. And then, of course, as time goes on, you see more about the game. They sneak in Cranky Kong. This call, by the way, predates the Cranky Kong reveal in Nintendo Today. And then you see some of Cranky's dialogue. And then, actually, this call predates us realizing there's a Naughty fossil in the trailer as well, now that I think about it. So there's just, like, a lot of realization that sets in that this actually is being very respectful of the history, of the total history of Donkey Kong. It's not just, oh, we got Donkey Kong, we're going to do completely new things with Donkey Kong, we're going to start from scratch yet again. There's a little bit more to it than that. And to the Kremlin fans, because I have a feeling we'll be getting a lot of calls about the Kremlins. I know we're going to be getting a lot of calls about the Kremlins and about how they might be incorporated into this game. But to the Kremlin fans, to the K. Rool fans out there, I will say this. You already won. And just because we have not seen K. Rool in the small sliver of footage we've seen, and I'm not saying he's definitely going to be in Bananza, I don't want to artificially raise expectations or hopes, but I will say, K. Rool being in Super Smash Bros. As a playable fighter is nothing to sneeze at. It's really not. It's a huge damn deal. And even looking at what EPD has done vis-a-vis Donkey Kong already in Odyssey, they have a K. Rool street sign in Odyssey in New Donk City. K. Rool hasn't been left behind, and I don't think he will be left behind. I think, there's obviously a lot of conspiracy theories right now. Not just conspiracy theories that are old and tired and relate to real life, like, oh, Nintendo hates K. Rool, but also that K. Rool might be the villainous mastermind behind Voidco, and, we'll be getting into that in later calls, but I feel like the thing that we all have to keep in mind about Bananza is that it is not going to be a one and done last chance for the next decade for Donkey Kong. We're so used to this extremely stretched out, prolonged release gaps between Donkey Kong games. What Bananza is attempting to course correct is to give Donkey Kong a stable home again. Bananza will be a new foundation, but it would be, I think, foolhardy to think that Bananza is just the like everything in Bonanza is going to be Donkey Kong from here on out, because as we've seen with 3D Mario might inform Mario for a generation, but it's never going to like rigidly define it from here on out. Like Super Mario Odyssey isn't the look or aesthetic of Mario with every Mario game after. And I think that Bonanza, it's a new 3D Donkey Kong game. We're not used to this. We're not used to having new 3D Donkey Kong games, especially from in-house Nintendo. So even if K. Rool, worst case scenario, K. Rool's not in this game, I don't think K. Rool's going to be gone forever in the mainline Donkey Kong series. I don't. I really don't. Because they wouldn't have brought him back in Smash Ultimate. They would have ignored the Smash Battle. They would have just left him in the past.
Yeah, I think it speaks to your point that, like, as we've discussed at length over like the course of various episodes and just in private, a lot of the very, like, I don't know how to feel reaction that was in the ether, like the first couple hours after that reveal trailer was just, as you said, it was a trailer that was created in a way that seemed to be completely agnostic to the decades of fandom psychodrama that the Donkey Kong fandom has been entrenched in, basically since the buyout, where we kind of aren't used to operating like within a hype cycle the same way every other fandom does.
Right.
And initially, after that trailer, after we learned about Cranky Kong and the Naughty and all of this other stuff that kind of got me 100% on board after being a little trepidatious at first, I did have this strong sense of lament of, oh, this stuff is all great. It's a shame that it wasn't in the trailer. So we had this what could have been just this absolute unified blowout of enthusiasm, blunted briefly, just because the trailer seemed to be almost scientifically cut to omit the very specific things that would have just immediately got everybody to sign off on it. But because that happened, the silver lining of that is I think it will set the tone for the rest of the hype cycle for this game, where you just can't jump the gun and on assumptions about how things will play out and
Right.
dig your heels in. Expect the unexpected. Be prepared to just understand things may not be what they seem at first. That goes for afterwards too. If K. Rool's not in the game, this is not the game that is dictating the future of Donkey Kong forever.
No, it is hopefully the first new game in a long lineage of games from here on out, and we'll be getting 2D Donkey Kong next, Donkey Kong Country. Imagine a Donkey Kong Country game developed by EPD. What the hell would that even feel like? But it is, I think, something to keep in mind that everything has felt like it's so important. Everything's riding on this. Everything's riding on this for the fandom. But it feels like the goalposts constantly move. First it was oh, Nintendo EPD, I hope DK Vine's reporting is right for this, because otherwise Donkey Kong's a dead brand. And then, it turns out, yes, Donkey Kong EPD exists. But then it's, we've got to see this character and that character and this character and that, or else it's not going to be my Donkey Kong. And a lot of this is just all of the lingering effects from 2002 and all of the aggrieved feelings, both real and the misconceptions, such as the mistranslated Jungle Beat interview. And look, I love Jungle Beat. Jungle Beat is a game I really came around on post Returns, when I felt like I had the mental bandwidth to go back to it and really understand it on its level. It's a lot of fun, and I really actually like a lot of the stuff in it. as far as characters go. And I would love to see some of those characters like reincorporated into the series at large. But it is like frustrating to be a Donkey Kong fan. And I think the retro era really crystallized this as well, where it felt like they were being like extremely conservative about which DK characters they would use. And even references were kept to a bare minimum. And that led to like people like Jeff on staff who they love Tropical Freeze, but there's always that part in the back of their brain. They're like, but why couldn't they have XYZ in the game? It's a Donkey Kong Country game. Why are you so afraid of Donkey Kong Country in your Donkey Kong Country game? With Bananza, I'm getting a different vibe. I'm getting this feeling that they really like Donkey Kong and they're like not afraid to reference Donkey Kong things.
Yeah, as I'm kind of pointing out, like after we got the news about Cranky and the Naughty, that was like we had pound for pound seen more returning elements from the series past than Returns is revealed by that point. That early on. Yeah.
It is, I think, maybe not as obvious. And of course, people have to keep abreast of all the little scraps of footage and screenshots. And it's a lot to take in. And a lot of people, like, they've only seen the trailer. They don't know even Cranky Kong being in the game yet. So I'm optimistic. And to Thomas's point, just to wrap things up, if you're a K. Rool fan, I think the best course of action is just to continue to celebrate K. Rool. Don't let this idea that, oh God, we got K. Rool in Smash, but now he's gone forever. Like, it's so easy to fall into that kind of doomerism mindset when it comes to characters you love, and especially characters who haven't gotten their due in a long time. But I think there's a lot of evidence that they have not forgotten about K. Rool, and just continue to celebrate what you love in a very positive way, because I have a feeling that the people making this game also love the things that we love. And like, we can have this discussion after Bananza's out and we've all played it and, you know, there's nothing left to spoil and we can kind of take stock then. But right now, I just don't feel like there's any reason to really wring our hands over the unknown. Baseline,
sure.
we have a new Donkey Kong game coming out in the middle of July. It's a 3D adventure. It's got more references than even Returns had at this point. So I think we don't have a lot to worry about. But we'll see. All right, thank you for the call. Let's go ahead and play our third caller.
Hey guys, it's Angry Ancestor. I'm sure you're gonna have like 30 calls to go through, so I'll make this brief. Just want to get this in there. If you don't get to it at all, no worries. So I wanted to ask, do you think we've basically seen everything there is to see for Donkey Kong Bananza? Obviously, we haven't seen everything. That would be ridiculous. But what I mean is, are they withholding a key piece of information from us to be revealed at a later date? The game comes out relatively soon, but there's still plenty of time for a hype cycle. I think back to Mario Odyssey, and the very first trailer for that game didn't show off Cappy at all. It just had Mario running around these weird-looking worlds. And then months later, we saw another trailer of the game where they revealed Cappy, which is the main gameplay hook of Odyssey. It's used for platforming, it's used for possessing objects and enemies, and it's the defining it factor for Odyssey. So I'm curious what you think. Is it possible that there is another gameplay hook or maybe some story element that majorly impacts this game that Nintendo is sort of keeping close to their chest to be revealed at a later date. I don't want to get my hopes up, but it's possible that Diddy Kong is in the game as like some kind of jetpack power up. It's possible that there's some kind of twist to the antagonist of the game, maybe related to the Kremlings. Like I said, I'm not getting my hopes up, but I do want to know where you guys stand. Do you think it's just going to be Jungle Beat V2 in terms of DKU elements? Or do you think it's going to sort of wet our whistles a little bit more? For me personally, I'm excited. I'm a little nervous. But, yeah, we'll see. We'll see, man. I'm going to go jack off.
Well, thanks for that
Well,
emotional roller coaster, angry ancestor.
Yeah. Well, I have a good feeling they're holding something back because
So
we know they wanted to hold something back.
Yeah. We're not going to wade into the spoiler waters of this episode. But yes, there is something they're clearly holding back, which Nintendo of Korea's website accidentally uploaded and then quickly removed when people realized it was there. And I would say that we're not going to talk about that, obviously, but I would say just based on that alone and the fact that the thing that they uploaded existed at all as an asset says to me there's way more to Bananza than just a little bit we've seen.
Right. I sincerely doubt, like, even what they kind of let slip through the cracks is gonna be the last big thing, just because if they're hiding something that seems like that big of a deal, then they must be hiding more than just that.
Yeah. Obviously, this call came before that leak was realized. And also this call came in before Cranky. Again, these are kind of snapshots in time, which is interesting, which from a historical perspective...
Eerily prescient call.
Yes, which is why I selected it, honestly. Because, like, I don't want to, like, play too many of these calls where it's just like, oh, we haven't seen any returning characters, and then, you know, a couple hours later, Cranky. But they are quite fascinating, because when, as a fandom, do we get to preserve those 8 hours of time before we really knew anything? Like, I would have loved to have had calls before David Wise was announced as the composer for Tropical Freeze, or, you know, even like that brief 20 seconds before Dixie Kong was announced. Just because it is kind of these moments in time that I remember as a hyper fan of all of this, but they're not really preserved for the masses. So it's fascinating to have these sort of mementos in time. But we also should talk about the way Nintendo structures trailers for their big 3D platforms. I mean, Mario is a baseline, but I think the comparison is apt in this case. You're right, like, Odyssey's first trailer didn't really give the game away yet. And I would say that a lot of the times, these trailers for 3D Mario games, they're not about showing what's returning, what elements from the series or characters from the series are coming back. It's bewildering you with the new. And Cameron, you and I discussed this. We discussed how a lot of the Donkey Kong fandom was feeling a little put off initially by this trailer, beyond just the initial excitement. Oh my god, it's finally here. And then there's the, as I called them, Jungle Beat scaries, but people have misinterpreted that to mean I hate Jungle Beat, or we hate anything that's not rare, and of course that's just not true. But there is that kind of lingering buyout era apprehension when it comes to anything like this, but Nintendo did not cut this trailer for us, per se. And they never cut these trailers, I think, for fans with a checklist in hand. Like, all right, where's Swanky? Where's Ingard? Where's any of the Brothers Bear.
Yeah.
I think, like, as we get closer to launch, and especially once Mario Kart World is out, the Switch 2 is officially launched, and they gear up towards actually focusing on Bonanza, we might see a lot more in the way of fan service as well.
For sure, and also, like, even outside the realm of their 3D platformers, like, in addition to not really being, like, a trailer cut for us, with their reveal trailers, Nintendo really has a history of not playing their entire hand at once with what a game is about. Like, it really took until just like a month ago for us to really understand what the primary new gimmick of Metroid Prime 4 is going to be.
Yeah. Because, although, granted, the first several trailers for Metroid Prime 4 were just the title and said, it's coming. We're working on it.
Or famously, the Tears of the Kingdom reveal. Yeah, you walked away from that and got about as much information about the game as anybody else did in that trailer.
Again, for more, if you want to see me walk away from the Tears of the Kingdom trailer in real time, watch our Banjo-Kazooie in Smash reaction video on YouTube. Like, I live the gimmick, my friends. I don't just put on this persona for the conversation. I actually just checked out of the Nintendo Direct once we got Banjo-Kazooie. I was like, all right, time to get to work. The rest of the Direct can kick rocks as far as I care. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you for the call, Angry Ancestor. I hope your post-Direct leisure activity was fruitful. All right, let's play our fourth call.
New Donkey Kong. Oh my gosh. I'm probably your 100th caller today, but I just had, this is Claire, by the way, and I just had like a couple things I wanted to point out, and that's that these new villains, I've heard they're called Void Co., like Void Corporation, and I'm wondering if, like, I think maybe there's like some shared DNA between them, and I remember hearing about Donkey Kong Freedom that the idea of like the villains in that would be that it would be like an evil factory that's like spreading pollution or something. And since Voidco seems to be like mining out like this big underground area, that, you know, maybe those ideas from Donkey Kong Freedom very much like, you know, were brought into Donkey Kong Bananza. So that's what I'm thinking about them. I think they're pretty cool. I know everyone wants to see the Kremlings, and I know there's like those rock enemies kind of look like they're in the shape of like a crocodile head. So I think their influence will be there in some way. But like I remember seeing someone thinking like, oh, what if K. Rool is like the main villain, like pulling all the strings? And I think that's just kind of like, I don't know, like they're not gonna pull like a Star Fox Adventures type twist. I think that would be very strange and not like Nintendo to do. Not that I don't want K. Rool to be in the game, but, you know, I want these new villains to have their time to shine. So, yeah, that's really a short call, but yeah, thank you for hearing my call. Okay, this is Claire again, because I had an insane theory that's totally not founded in anything, but, so I see that, you know, I've been rewatching the trailer, and I see that a lot of this game takes place in, like, an underground world. And I'm thinking, like, what if, like, elements of the Crocodile Isle sank into, like, the sea? Which I think I've seen people, like when the Crocodile sinks into the sea, and what if there's, like, stuff from the underground there, like the fossilized, like, seemingly like fossilized Kremlings and stuff is from that. And I've seen some people, like, think stuff like that a little bit. And I just had, like, an insane, like, I remember I was watching some video about, I believe the character witness for Espresso the Ostrich, where you guys said that all the ostriches in the ostrich racing didn't make it off the island, because you don't see them make it off the island. And I thought about, oh, those poor ostriches. What if, we see an area in here with a lot of ostriches, what if those are those ostriches? Who knows? So yeah, I just wanted to put that insane theory about ostriches out there. It is completely unfounded in anything. But yeah, thank you. Bye.
Well, thank you for the calls, Claire. You know, there's been a fan theory that's been developing, which I think later calls get into a little bit more. But I stumbled upon this theory independently on the conversation I did with Josh, where I was just like, wait a second. This game takes place in like the underground kingdom, like layers upon layers of hollow earth. What if K. Rool's trying to get to the Kremlin source again? And that theory is kind of taking off in the fandom, and I don't want to. The last thing I want to do is come up with a more fan-pleasing story than what's actually in the game, and then we're all just disappointed. But it's a fun theory, and I wanted to play Claire's Calls because I've never heard this theory that the ostriches in the ostrich layer of the Underground Kingdom are actually the racing ostriches from TKC. Like, Donkey Kong's talking to Minogue or Rapido or Ozzy. That would be beyond even Payon levels of fan service. Like, that would be, oh my god, they're freaks like us. Which, I'm not putting...
We have spies watching DK Vine, and the message they took was, the fandom's really into these ostriches.
Yeah. I mean, that would be even more amazing than the Kremlins, honestly. Like, I would willingly sacrifice K. Rool on a bloody altar if it meant, yes, we're gonna have the racing ostriches in the game. But, yeah, people are obviously seeing comparisons with, like, the Underground Kingdom and the Lost World, the Kremlins, the Crocodile Core, the Kremlin Source. More on that later, I assume.
Yeah. It's kind of fun that I think the genesis of a lot of these like theories or just like fun thought exercises coming to mind is just that there is a lot of parity between what we've seen in Bananza and things that have just been around in the series forever.
Yeah.
Like, mining has been a huge thing since DKC 1.
It does really feel like some of it is a very intentional nod. Like, I would even say Donkey Kong, the big reveal shot of him in the miner's hat, and, you know, like, I think that's just inspired by those renders from Donkey Kong Country. And it's like, oh, that's so cool. It's a pity there's nothing in the game where he's actually wearing that. I mean, that was the original intention, but then they didn't get it working, and it was just Squawks holding a flashlight. But some of it is very much like an intentional nod, and some of it, I think, is just the team, I think, understands like the mythic properties behind the Donkey Kong series. And like, I talked about this before, but how much I really dig that they're going with like the Hollow Earth as the setting for the game and really exploring that. It's like straight out of mythology and also Pulp Fiction and just a lot of the same DNA that Rare traded in for their games. And so you're going to see some overlap, maybe unintentional, maybe intentional, but it does feel like it all fits. And that's the great thing about the Donkey Kong series. That's always what's worked in my mind about the Donkey Kong series is there's some continuity and canon and lore that is on purpose, but a lot of it just accidentally fits together. And if that's the case, if it's just accidentally fitting, then hey, you know, we're going to have fun with that all the same. All right, let's play our fifth call.
Hey, this is a Square from the forum in the inner circle. I'm calling a few hours after the treehouse, and I think the game looks really cool. But one of the most interesting things, I think, is the crocoids, which I'm sure you guys have talked about by now, but there's a theme of, like, fossilization in the game. It looks like you sell fossils, and we're looking at what seem to be, like, crocodile or reptile skeletons that have been covered in rock or in gold or some sort of mineral. And I was just wondering, do you guys think that's some sort of reference to the Kremlins? Do you think we'll get a mention of the Kremlins? We know that Cranky seems to make a sly reference to K. Rool Do you think that's all we're going to see at the Kremlings? Do you think maybe even like a name drop of K. Rool is possible? Yeah, that's all I wanted to ask. Bye-bye.
Thank you for the call, Square. Yeah, I think K. Rool will be mentioned at the very least. I would be shocked if he wasn't. I don't think they're going to go out of their way to avoid any of Donkey Kong's past, where it feels like they're deliberately sidestepping it, as we maybe saw in past post-Rare DK games.
Yeah, I think the fact that they are willing to have another type of crocodile enemy in the game means that they know that they can't really, like, get away with doing that without addressing the elephant in the room. Even if there's, like, no connection between the Crocoids and the Kremlings,
Yeah.
they have to at least bring up that Donkey Kong has fought crocodiles before. And I think like we saw in Retro's games, they kind of conspicuously avoided doing that, but they did it in a way of like, well, they didn't have to mention the Kremlings because they went out of their way to not have things that would make you ask that question.
Yeah. It is odd. And I know all these like fan theories are cropping up. I engaged in it myself and stumbled upon the Kremling source idea. It is odd, very, very odd, to have one of the primary like hench critters or whatever of Voidco be anthropomorphic crocodilian humanoids. And of course, we got the crocoids, but then people pointing out that the buzzoids, ignoring the fact that Buzz is an enemy from DKC3 and DKL3, but buzzoids do resemble zingers in their like front, in the eyes and the antenna, and there's like this level of artifice when it comes to the crocoids and the buzzoids, and it's like something's up. I'm not sure if it's going to really pay off the way we all hope it's going to pay off, but I am sure it has to come up. And that's the other great thing about a 3D adventure versus a 2D platformer. Because a 2D platformer almost is limited by what you can address. Because the only time you're going to have dialogue is in the map screen shops or whatever. Yeah. And here you're going to have these robust worlds full of NPCs, and all of the NPCs have dialogue. And I would be shocked if we didn't have this addressed. I do think Cranky is alluding to K. Rool in his early dialogue. There's been a lot of debate. Is he actually talking about K. Rool, or is he talking about Voidco? Like, he already knows what Voidco is. And I mean, that's possible. I grant you that, but
it certainly bodes well that we saw a very limited, like, slice of this game presented through the treehouse.
Yeah.
And even in that, we can tell, one, this is going to be an incredibly text-heavy game with a lot of dialogue. And two, in just the very limited, like, very curated bit of Cranky dialogue we got references to him being the original Donkey Kong, references to the DK rap, references to Rambi, references to him possibly knowing who Voidco are. All of this, like, you barely let Cranky speak, and he's already just, like, dropping enough, like, to fill out, like, a list on a wiki.
It's almost like Cranky is just there to reassure the fans. Like, we're telling a story here. Calm down. Rambi, Donkey Kong Island, DK rap, K. Rool maybe? Just calm down. Let us do our thing. Let us cook, as the kids say. And I like just knowing Rambi is going to be in it. They wouldn't have his little head icon in there if he wasn't in it. Just knowing Rambi's in it, there's way more. To speak to the previous call, there's way more they're not showing mechanically. So I would say there's way more with the plot as well, and the Crocoid Kremlin connection, I think, could be real. I do. Now, here's the other thing about why they might be going this route of kind of having this other crocodilian enemy that might point towards K. Rool, while maybe getting into maybe broader Kremlin lore. I don't know if they're going to go that deep, no pun intended, but there is the fact that the Kremlins have kind of an unfortunate name right now, geopolitically, because it could be taken to mean a reference to the Kremlin, as Wrinkly says in DKL3. And they, don't want to really wade in those waters. So maybe this is their way of getting around the name of the Kremlins, post-Ukraine, and still utilizing K. Rool. One of my theories going into DK EPD, in the years we've known about it and we've talked about it and theorized about it, is I very much could see the possibility where they bring back K. Rool as a reoccurring character, but maybe they don't bring back the Kremlin crew. Or, like, K. Rool isn't really the persistent antagonist, but he's always there as kind of a King DDD type. Ironically enough, given his own Smash reveal. But, maybe there's going to be other things that plague Donkey Kong, and K. Rool is an instigator, or like this third element, this rogue element that's always there getting things more complicated. But yeah, like, I think something might be up. I agree with you. I just don't know what yet. In the live stream really quick, the Snake Fighter 64 says, I'd be more willing to let them cook if I knew all the ingredients they were using. Like, I hate food, so it's probably a poor analogy. So, but, I think that so long as you know that nothing in the ingredients are against your dietary restrictions, like you're not going to have an allergic reaction to something, then you maybe can get excited about the meal. And I don't know. Hello to Me Muppet and Gigastrike who have joined us. And yeah, I think that the only thing I really want to feel right now is optimism and excitement. And maybe that's, not where everybody's at, and I completely get that. But this has been a long time coming, this game. And we've talked about it, Cameron, that it's a shame that we didn't get just like that shot of Cranky, like the cut of the trailer on Nintendo Today where Donkey high-fives Cranky rather than high-fiving the ostrich, who we'll assume now is Minogue. But it's a shame that we didn't have that, because it did kind of dilute the moment for a lot of people, thinking it was going to be another Jungle Beat complete reinvention when it's not. And it's clearly not, but it's just Nintendo's way of doing things. Like, we all wanted that big fan surfacey trailer after 11 years in the wilderness. We wanted something, and we all fantasized about something that was going to just tick those boxes. But I think we might be seeing a little bit more of that going forward in the hype cycle. Martro says, when do you all think we'll get a second trailer? Honestly, I don't know. It might not even be until Mario Kart World comes out, because I think that DK Bananza will be taking sort of a back seat until the beginning of June. But I could be wrong.
I think like late May, early June just makes sense. That gives enough time before the game comes out to show some news information and let Mario Kart breathe a little bit.
It would be kind of turnabout, because they did the Switch 2 trailer, the teaser trailer, the day Returns HD came out. So let's have the next Bonanza trailer the day the Switch 2 comes out. Let's just suck the oxygen right back. All right, let's play our sixth call.
Hey Hyle, hey Josh, this is Traveler of the Stars. I'm actually going to make this a quick call for once, and I'm crazy because I'm sure Hyle, you've gotten a million calls, and just wanted to say, the first conversation I ever called in for was 907. Heard any good rumors lately that you and Josh were on? And then, I never doubted you, and talking about all the design stuff, theme park, yada yada. I always reference when calling in. Really, you really just kept on hoping and believing in everything. And yeah, I just you deserve your flowers for that. And yeah, I think Bananza looks great. The one thing I will tell people is that even if like, you're not a fan of it, isn't it just like great? Like Kyle, all the stuff you were saying about Nintendo investing in DK, they have it as their second month game after Switch 2 launches. That's where Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was for original Switch, and you can smell and see the budget, right? You can just like feel the budget put into it. And I think it's cool how like destructible the game is. But I don't know. I'm sure there'll be more conversations talk about it. So I don't want to keep you guys for very long, but, yeah, it's awesome. And it's just great that Donkey Kong has a game again. So, keep up the great work. You both look amazing as usual. See you.
Well, thank you for the call, Traveler of the Stars. I know this was intended for the episode that Josh was on, but I'm going to assume you also think Cameron looks incredible as well.
Thank you.
I think that, like, I never lost the faith because obviously I knew what was up, but I think where the relief came for me was that, oh, finally, I don't have to keep, like, not making excuses, but having to, like, face everyone and being like, look, I don't know where it is either. Like, all I know is they're doing it. They're making it. I'm sorry I talked about it so early in its development, before, like, I probably knew about this before it even actually started, like, concept art. Like, so it's just one of those things where we're not used to having any knowledge about what's going on at EPD. And knowing how early this game was earmarked and, like, basically waiting for its entire development cycle was a very unique experience and very stressful for me because I knew every Nintendo Direct it didn't show up, I would get angry calls or angry messages or death threats even. So I'm glad to be done with that. I'm glad that we're just on the other side of it, and now it's just, okay, it exists. You can believe me now when I shoot my mouth, I'm not just shooting it. I'm just not making up stuff. So, yeah, it feels good. And yeah, like, kind of broadly hidden in Traveler's Call here is just thinking about what the Donkey Kong brand is right now and the totality of it beyond just Bananza. Bananza is obviously going to be a huge centerpiece when it comes out, but we've also got the theme park. We've also got all the new merchandise that they're doing for Donkey Kong. And, like, that's nothing to sneeze at. We've got this Donkey Kong calendar for 2026 that's coming out like the same week Bananza is launching, and that's full of new artwork of Diddy, Dixie, and Cranky. And, like, I think that we as a fandom have to just kind of let go a little bit and not worry whenever a Donkey Kong trailer doesn't have every character in it that we want to see. Because the Donkey Kong series is in good hands now. It's finally got a stable home after over 20 years. And I don't want to, like, downplay Retro's tenure with it, but I feel like Retro was always going to be more of a stopgap, an illustrious stopgap, but they were never going to be able to develop Donkey Kong games at the rate we as fans hoped for, but also Shigeru Miyamoto wanted. So now that we, like, have, as you said, you can see the budget in the game. Now that we have Donkey Kong in-house and that there's potential for more Donkey Kong games to come on the Switch too, both 2D. We don't even see a sequel to Bonanza. I don't even know. Like, we'll see. But I think that just looking at the wide breadth of everything we've seen since EPD took over the DK series, they separated the Donkey Kong brand from the Super Mario brand for licensees, for merchandisers. And we see, like, all the elements that have been referenced since then, going back to New Donk City, Smash Ultimate, yes, like the calendars, the theme park. There's a lot in there.
at the very least, it feels like the era of like the Donkey Kong franchise having to having to justify its existence essentially is over.
Yes. Exactly.
We don't really, as a fandom, have to be defensive about the importance of Donkey Kong, that Donkey Kong is a series that has like a right to exist as this high profile Nintendo tentpole.
And I think EPD doing Donkey Kong will really help change that perception. You kind of ran into it a little bit with Bananza's reveal, especially all the people who just thought that it had to be 3D Mario and that of course they were working on 3D Mario and why would they be doing Donkey Kong? I can really freely talk about this now that I don't have to manage expectations. Because I wasn't sure it was going to be 3D, right? All I knew is the Vicarious Visions project was 3D, and it given the amount of development time that went into this, the more time went on, the more I thought it's going to be 3D. It's going to be a 3D adventure, and it was. But it was funny, because I was dead certain that it was going to be a 3D Donkey Kong, and I was certain we were going to see it before Mario. But it's funny because unless you're really plugged into what we were saying and kept the faith, the overall opinion was it's 3D Mario. We're going to see 3D Mario. We're going to see Odyssey 2. And it wasn't that.
That would be the predictable thing of Nintendo's launching a new console, so we're going to get a new console Mario, their mascot.
Mm-hmm.
But as we have established over how many years doing this show, running this website, trying to predict what Nintendo will do is a losing game.
Yes, and as part of our reporting, I've been stressing they want to build Donkey Kong, the brand, up as an equitable IP alongside Mario, alongside Zelda, alongside Splatoon now, Animal Crossing. And they want to make it a big tentpole again. And we are seeing that the last few years. It's been an incredible rollout, and it's been gradual, and it just it's staggering to me that so many people didn't get it, even when it was happening, with 1/3 of the Super Mario Brothers movie being devoted to just Donkey Kong and his world, and here's Swanky Kong, what the fuck? 1/2 of Super Nintendo World being Donkey Kong Country, as an equal branch next to Super Mario Land. What the hell?
Also, gotta say, feels really good to have both a 3D Donkey Kong and a 3D Metroid in the same direct, so that people don't have to wring their hands.
And honestly, it's why I'm kind of glad that Donkey Kong is now away from Retro Studios. As much as I love those Retro Studios Donkey Kong Country games, and as much as I would love to see them do it again, as much as I talk about, hey, EPD doing Donkey Kong Country would be pretty wild.
Of course, it's just such a relief to see a hard line being drawn of that this petty fandom infighting does not need to be a thing.
And that's been the biggest thing since the buyout, and one of the reasons Donkey Kong fans are as cracked as they are, it's because we've, as you said, constantly had to justify Donkey Kong's existence to other Nintendo fans since Rare was purchased by Microsoft, and it stopped being sort of their de facto flagship IP for, as it was in those 8 years they were partnered with Nintendo. And Donkey Kong being under EPD is the best case scenario because, one, Donkey Kong is Miyamoto's baby, but two, I feel like EPD is big enough and has the backing enough that it doesn't, or it won't feel like we're constantly jockeying with other Nintendo IPs who aren't getting their due. And it will, therein justify Donkey Kong's existence to a whole new generation of Nintendo fans, just as Donkey Kong's existence was justified to the Rare generation back in the 90s. So, yeah, good times, I would say.
For sure.
All right, let's play our 7th caller.
Hello, DK Vine. This is a first for me. I'm calling you guys while in the middle of a massive traffic jam on the way to work. Figured I got 17 minutes to kill. Why not call in to talk about this? So, yeah, Donkey Kong Bananza just announced for the Nintendo Switch 2. This has been a long time coming. We've been waiting for this for so long. I figured I only want to talk about the positives to this. Yeah, so it looks very well made. You know, it's great that it's being made in-house finally from Nintendo's Tokyo team, if we're led to believe. It's great that there are so many references to Rare's era of DK. Like, as you guys have said, we all thought this was going to be another Jungle Beat situation when we saw the first reveal. And, you know, as we analyzed the footage a little more, as we saw, you know, Cranky Kong get confirmed, that's clearly not the case. Like, this isn't running away from DK's past. It's very much embracing it and bringing it along for the future. It's really, one thing I really, really love about this game is that it feels like we finally get a game that is shaped around Donkey Kong. You know, you guys always lament that Donkey Kong 64 had to be reworked into being a Banjo kind of clone, and Banjo itself was borrowing very heavily from Mario 64. So it's easy to see how, you know, that 3D platformer genre felt so overcrowded. But I'm looking at footage of this game. This isn't a situation where you could say, like, oh, you know, why can't this be a Mario game? You know, put Mario in place of DK and just do that. Or, like, oh, why can't Link from Zelda do all this stuff? The smashing, the climbing, everything that DK is doing and interacting with in this game is uniquely Donkey Kong. And it's nice to have something suited for him like that. I guess another thing I'll say, I'm really, really interested to know what kind of role the supporting Kongs will play. Like, we know Cranky's there, and it looks like he's some sort of NPC that might, you know, give you side missions or side quests. Kind of gives me a lot of Sonic Frontiers vibes, where the role Tails, Knuckles, and Amy played in that game before its DLC. So it would be really cool if we saw, of course, Diddy, Dixie, even guys like Lanky and Tiny filling that same role, just NPCs that DK can interact with and chat with. So I'm very, very excited. I love that it's coming out so soon, and yeah, I know you guys are as well. So thanks for taking the call.
Well, thank you for the call in gridlock traffic. Infrastructure is so terrible in this country. But yeah, I think that, as you said, like, and as we've already said, it being a 3D platformer really does open up the possibility for not just like character cameos, but characters serving a role and a function that they could never serve in a 2D platformer. And we don't even know what Cranky's doing really yet. That's the wild thing to me. He's got a shovel. It's a very specific thing to have, and we made a lot of jokes about it. But why does he have a shovel, Cameron?
Yeah, I also really like this caller's point of, yeah, this really feels like a kind of like style of game that can really only do because Donkey Kong is Nintendo's resident, like, big guy.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's something that, like, even historically in like Donkey Kong's own games has gone kind of under the radar. Like, was talking off on Discord with previous conversation guest Courtney, who pointed out that, like, we've come a long way from DK64 with Donkey Kong struggling to pull a lever, where he couldn't even be the strongest Kong in his own game.
To be fair, this is after Donkey Kong's drank Cranky's Strong Kong potion, so like he's good now. But yeah, like it is. I think
he can now struggle to pull a device specifically designed to be pulled.
Yeah, Donkey Kong 64. Not the most elegant game design, but, you know, we all have affection for it in various ways. I do like that point, though, that yes, like, this is very clearly a type of 3D platformer for Donkey Kong. And not everybody's on board with the, like, smashing and digging elements, but I think it works. And there's also enough past Donkey Kong stuff in there, like the roll jumping is in there from Country. So between roll jumping, between the climbing, and also the turf surfing, which I still feels like might be a carryover or partially inspired by what Vicarious Visions was doing with their Donkey Kong project, vine grinding. I think there's a lot of stuff that's just well suited for the character of Donkey Kong and what he's capable of. And it feels like a fresh, unique type of 3D adventure game that we've never seen before, not just in the DKU, but in general. And that's another weird feeling, is usually as a Donkey Kong fan, we have to justify ourselves, not just like, oh, we have to justify our series' existence, but we have to justify why this game exists. Like, why would you play Donkey Kong Country over a 2D Super Mario game? Why would you play Donkey Kong 64 over Banjo-Kazooie, which is, a large part of our fandom has overlap with Banjo-Kazooie, but it's still like, oh, well, Banjo-Kazooie it's just better, honestly. So why play Donkey Kong 64? Donkey Kong 64's only claim to fame was it's another 3D platformer, but this has more bloat in it.
Yeah, we're also in this really good place with the character where we're seeing him do all these new things for the first time, but they are completely in keeping with the personality of the character as we understand him.
That's a really good point, and it's not to keep going back to Jungle Beat, because it makes it sound like I'm criticizing Jungle Beat, which, again, I've really come around on, and I think it's a fantastic game in its own right. But Jungle Beat was all about, like, brutalizing everything in Donkey Kong's path. And in this game, even though it's all about, destruction and digging and burrowing deeper and deeper, Donkey Kong is not portrayed like this bloodthirsty, mindless agent of destruction.
He really never stops looking like this just adorable teddy bear of a gorilla in any frame of Bonanza.
Which is why I have come around on this redesign. And again, it's never going to be my favorite. I'm always going to prefer the 1994 original and all of the deviations of it. But just seeing how they have captured the essential personality of Rare's Donkey Kong, and there's not this question of, oh, is he going to be just this unrepentant jerk ass because Diddy's not by his side 24/7? No, he's Donkey Kong. He's the gentle giant. He might have a bit of a temper. He might fly off the handle on occasion, but at the end of the day, he will do the right thing. And he shows empathy. He shows understanding and affection towards Oddrock, which I love. That's really what sold me on Oddrock. It was like, oh my god.
Yeah, I'm not over how good that scene was. This is like the perfect establishing moment of establishing the kind of character Donkey Kong is.
Which is so funny to me because, you and I have talked about this. I think amongst DK Vine staffers, this is a discussion we've had together more than any others have. Just Nintendo's struggle to portray Donkey Kong accurately post 2002. And whenever he's with Diddy, Donkey Kong is pretty much perfect. Whenever he's not with Diddy, things might get dodgy. And to have just this pitch perfect portrayal of Donkey Kong, and we still haven't seen any trace of Diddy in the game, it's a breath of fresh air. I want Diddy. Don't get me wrong. I want Diddy somewhere in there. Diddy's my guy. But this might be edging out that Subspace Emissary portrayal of Donkey Kong in Super Smash Bros. Brawl as my favorite depiction of Donkey Kong, just when he soothes Oddrock with music, with whistling. That's great.
It's a really, really good moment.
All right. Call number 8. We are halfway through the selected calls, so let's go.
Hey, Kongversation. This is just Andre. And I'm completely aware that even under normal conditions, I'm absolutely terrible at being concise. And I know you've got dozens of calls. So I've made a list of bullet points, and I'm just going to rattle through them all as quick as I can. So, number 1. Obviously, the game itself, that's the main thing, right? But can I just take 1 sec to point out how much Nintendo's really honed the craft of game reveal trailers themselves, like down to a science, like from the Switch 1 onwards. I just love it when they do these trailers like this one where there's a full minute at the start of the trailer where you're just like trying to figure out what it is you're looking at, and then wham, they hit you with the reveal and you just like lose your mind. Anyway, number 2, there's so many changes, so many, not just to the environments, but to how you traverse them compared to what we've gotten used to from past games. Obviously a lot of the time the games have environments where you're just out in nature, right? But when you do get levels where you're inside a more man-made structure, the structures are so, oh god, what's the word? Rustic? That's not. Anyway, even though it's not like we haven't gotten these more industrial environments we're seeing from past games, the ones we're getting this time feel so much more central to whatever this brand new setting ends up being. And speaking of the environments, it's not like we haven't had tons of vertical spaces in the series, previously. But compared to past games where you're either climbing up the level slowly or you're going down the level fast because, you fell off the platform, the ability to explore this freely almost no matter which direction you want to go. It's not just that it looks fun, right? It's that it looks so empowering in a way that it doesn't seem like any of the past games have given us. And speaking of empowering, it's not just the movement options. It's the fact that even though the trailer actually showed surprisingly little in the way of, combat against enemies, what we do see of all the different moves we'll be able to do really makes it look like the game gives you the tools to mess all the enemies up even more than they can mess you up. And all the new enemies are so weird. Alright, I'm seeing I'm starting to run short on time, so to wrap it up, I know that even now, after we've all had a little time to process it, there are some people, there's a lot of people still, who are, feeling really let down by what the game is compared to how they would want it to be, which for the record is a completely valid reason to dislike a game. But I can only speak for myself, and despite my own reservations about the game, because I do have some, and despite all the much-deserved controversy the Switch 2 is getting about its pricing, I personally absolutely cannot wait to pick up a Switch 2 so that I can play The Duskbloods by From Software.
Andre, thank you for wasting our time.
Hello, hi, DK Vine and Geek Critique, who I believe is doing this episode, the Kongversation episode. Today, the day has finally come for the Donkey Kong Nation of Fandom, as Donkey Kong Bananza, aka DKEPD, has been revealed for Switch 2. Personally, I'm looking forward to this game for a wide variety of reasons, including the fact that this will be our first new Donkey Kong game in 11 years, and also the fact that it might have a gold mine of references more than what Retro Studios did and definitely what EPD did before with Jungle Beat. For me, I've been keeping an eye out on the rumors surrounding this game since about 2021, which was when I founded the DK Vine website and got into the broader DKU fandom. So it's nice knowing that all of our patience has paid off spectacularly, I might add. Also, just the fact that Bananza is coming out 10 days before my birthday this year as well makes it nice to see. Anyways, I'll call you both later on another Kongversation episode. Bye.
Well, thank you for the call. This was just a nice call. Just want to play. Sometimes you just want a little nice call, a little nice pick-me-up, and be like, oh yeah, lovely. I like hearing from people, too, who found DK Vine or the Kongversation via the rumors about this game. Because it's just kind of a nice, yeah, okay.
Really had the duality of conversation calls there.
Yeah, right. I needed a palate cleanser after just Andre had, wasted my time for almost 3 minutes. It's fun seeing when people discovered to our website or our podcast, and maybe it's self-aggrandizing to discuss, but I'm always fascinated by it because I think back to how many people discovered us via the ukulele hype, back when that game was even before they really broached what the game was. We had Chris Sutherland on the Kongversation back in season 3, and that was kind of one of the big episodes where people started to find out about the Kongversation, and that's how Mitchell Wolf came into our circle, because he discovered us from that episode. And I mean, that's crazy to me that somebody who's just been an entrenched part of our circle of friends, came about because I reached out to Chris Sutherland and was like, "Hey, would you like to be on our podcast, Mr. Sutherland?" And not only did it mean a lot to talk to Chris Sutherland, but I made a lifelong friend out of it as well. So it's kind of cool to see the different eras of our podcast and when people jumped aboard. And I'm sure people are jumping aboard now that Bananza has been announced and it is a thing. And that I love just looking at the history of anything. It just fascinates me, but just how we are entering a new era now of the DKU and what that will mean as far as like an infusion of new people coming into our circle, and maybe we'll make some new lifelong friends as well.
Yeah, it's always really fascinating to like even go back to people I've known in the community for going on a decade now, of just like one little point where the lines on the graph intersect is all it takes to just completely like absorb somebody into the community, and it's great, and it's always fun to like go back and see like what was the connecting point for you.
I mean, I think back to Returns getting announced, and I mean that was of course the turning of the page for DK Vine in a lot of ways and really set us on our current course, but that's also the game that eventually brought you into the staff, Cameron, and Matt, and I mean, up through, I think, Jeff.
Yeah, I've been hanging out in the community since like the buyout era, and I think it was at its core, I like there are arguable like points of my like point of entry into DK Vine. Like, was it somebody else on another forum sharing, "Look at these guys and how angry they are," or or just like turning up DK Vine in Google searches, coming back and realizing, oh, this is the same place that rebranded after DK64 kind of fell out of the zeitgeist, and we found ourselves in the new buyout era. Or, but I think at the end of the day, it was mostly like I found DK Vine because like it felt like we weren't getting new Donkey Kong games regularly. Ha ha ha. And I like just wanted somebody to talk to about them. But it's also fun that some of the people in the community I know and have forged the biggest connections with, like I'll bond with them over like Banjo or Grab by the Ghoulies, and then find out years later, like, oh yeah, I got into this community because I was playing the Donkey Kong Country games on Game Boy Advance.
Yeah. And that's what every new release, that potential is there to have new people come into the community, or for people to like make a louder voice within the community. And so it's really cool. And that's also why it's so thrilling to have a high profile Donkey Kong game like this, because we've kind of been running on fumes for a while now. And this kind of not only gives us a shot in the arm, but it also like brings
you can tell by how this podcast isn't really built to withstand 50 calls in a week.
Yeah, it's like I said before, like when we started this podcast, we were really just doing a podcast for our forum on our website. And yes, talking about infrastructure, some of the infrastructure of DK Vine has been a bit rickety, and we've had to kind of upscale it since then. And thank God we have that firewall now. Really, really helps now. Not that I ever want to advocate for AI bot scrapers, but had that not happened, we might not have the stability in place to handle something like Bananza. So, yay, the world's shit.
Hi, this is SnakeFighter64, and I'm sending this so that you can just count this as my calls back instead of all the bunch of calls that I did before when emotions were high. I don't know how I feel about this game. I kind of don't. I like how there is a lot of rare stuff here. There's a lot of what you've been saying it's true. It's clear these people really like Donkey Kong Country. It's just frustrating the things that they did then feel the need to change. I don't know anyone who ever really thought, like, yeah, DK is strong, but that's not kind of the point of any of his games, so making it the whole premise of his first new game in years feels a little misplaced. And I'm sorry, the main character, with his new character design and also just the way the worlds look, it looks very Mario. I have no idea where you are coming from with Earthbound, or I forget what Josh said. It's just, as soon as I saw those environments, I thought it was Mario Odyssey or whatever, which is why I stopped paying attention and missed the monkeys. It looks so Mario, just not necessarily in terms of like, oh, this is Mushroom Kingdom Hills, but just like the assets and the texture styling and the way they build games. As someone who forced themselves through Odyssey just to have another platformer to play, it looks a lot like that. It feels like there's too much Mario here, and Donkey Kong just looks like a Mario character. He looks like this design was created so that he would fit in a lot better alongside the other Mario characters, and it feels so weird to then also have all this stuff from Rare's era. And I think that's why it was so easy to fall into that false trap before. Because, I mean, it looked like they were trying to make it more Mario, so why would we not assume they were being, disingenuous or whatever? I don't know. That's just my thoughts. It looks kind of fun. If I can afford it, I'll get it. But I don't know. I kind of wish the first DK game in a while had been a little bit more familiar, as opposed to what we're getting.
Well, thank you for the call, Snake Fighter 64. I went through this litany of emotions, as I know you did, Cameron, as you discussed on the last episode. And I think it's perfectly acceptable to still be on the fence about this, because we're all processing this game and this new era of Donkey Kong at different speeds, and it's all also based on what we expect and what we want, particularly from the franchise.
I certainly can't argue the first impression that the game looked Mario-esque, because my moment of trying to decipher what game they were possibly showing was so I wasn't sure, and then we got to the part with the monkeys that for a lot of people was it's Donkey Kong. That was when the gears clicked in place for them. My thought process was, well, okay, this looks like it could be Donkey Kong, but what it definitely is instead is, because it's making me think that this is definitely like something in the world of Mario Odyssey. This is a new Donk City. This is a Donkey Kong adjacent thing in the world of Mario that we are getting.
Yeah.
And then Donkey Kong burst through the wall and knocked me on my ass.
Yeah, I think, well, for one thing, I didn't actually think it looked like Mother, because I have no conception really of anything that's outside of the DKU beyond what I grew up with before the DKU. But I think why I made that mental leap, and it was more like subconscious, was I think Ingot Isle kind of reminded me of New Pork City in Smash. And it just thought something about the neon in it, which of course I associate neon with Donkey Kong, but only because of my dumb website. And to actually see that kind of aesthetic in Donkey Kong is weird and unknown to me still. So I didn't literally think it was Earthbound or Mother, but I
I get it. It's like you were dismissive that it was Donkey Kong, so you were looking for any kind of reach of a thing it could be.
Yeah. And I saw the monkey miners and I knew, I was one of the ones that, like, as soon as I saw a monkey, I was like, and then I started cackling wildly, and didn't stop until half a minute, maybe a minute in, and I was like, I don't see any familiar characters. Uh-oh. But I can understand the disappointment because I think the expectation, especially with such a wide gulf of time, the expectations, and we all build the fantasy in our head of like that moment, that reveal, that sweet, sweet taste of vindication where you get a new Donkey Kong game and it's a high profile Donkey Kong game and it's going to have all the things we love as fans. And we didn't get that. And I don't think that's Nintendo's style, really, as we've already discussed with these trailers. And I mean, there's no way it was ever going to match any of our expectations. And that's something.
In part because our expectations are all over the place.
Yeah, like
individual to individual.
Those shower thoughts, or those thoughts you get on a long drive, maybe, where you let yourself daydream, and you start thinking like, I need a distraction from the world. What am I going to daydream about? Ooh, a new Donkey Kong game getting revealed. What would it look like? Who would we see? I mean, we've kind of done that so much over the span of the conversation, just talking about like that ideal DK trailer. And yeah, it is kind of unfortunate that maybe we were robbed of that because we got a trailer that was full of the unknown and the unusual, but that's just Nintendo style. And to your point about Donkey Kong being strong and that being an emphasis on him in this game, and that's never been a focal point in any of his other games, I get that. I do. But I also think they're playing with it in a fun way with Bananza, where he never feels like he's just a brute, where he's just the Incredible Hulk. At the very least, it feels like he's Smart Hulk from Endgame, where he's, he's got more going on than just pulverizing everything in his path.
What's making it work for me, and this is something that was only really apparent after watching the Treehouse, I think, is that they've leaned more into Donkey Kong's strength and being able to rip things apart, but the pre-existing abilities, that established abilities and personality of Donkey Kong aren't like being shelved to let this come to the forefront. Like it was like a big thing, like as Josh went into on his episode, that we saw DK able to roll jump in a 3D space.
For sure.
And I was fully prepared for the possibility that something like that would just be off the table to facilitate this new gameplay style. But no, they left that in. They left barrel blasting.
Barrel blasting. We know there are other barrels in the game. There are, like, we've seen these green barrels in the background, and you've got the climbing, you've got the turf surfing. Like, Donkey Kong's agility is still present, even if there is this, like, focus on digging and smashing and breaking things. I mean, the whistle thing is in the game. He can whistle these melodic tunes, and yeah, I think that I always knew that Donkey Kong under EPD was never going to be a 1-for-1 match for what I think of when I think of Donkey Kong. And I think I've already made my acceptance of that. And that's also why Donkey Kong's redesign isn't really bugging me. As I've said before in the conversation, if this is the deal with the devil we have to make to get reliable Donkey Kong games going forward, so be it. If they have to tweak his design, and seeing that design in motion, I know that's what people always say about the nuts and bolts, redesign of Banjo. Like, oh, it looks much better in motion. It looks much better in the game than it looks in screenshots or promotional images. But yeah, like seeing Donkey Kong, his new model, like actually being animated and actually interacting with things, I feel like my guy is in there. I don't feel like it's this some stranger, this some Mario amalgamation of what I loved before, or diluting it in any way. I feel like it's just visually a little bit different, or it's an evolution of it. And yeah, like I said, it's never going to be everybody's cup of tea, especially if you really fell in love with the older design. But, nothing stays stagnant, especially in a series that never ends. Like, they'll be making Donkey Kong games long after we're dead, hopefully. So it's going to be just this constant evolution. And, will the series ever get to the point where you're like, this doesn't feel like my series anymore? I don't know if I'm a fan of the direction the series has gone in. Yeah, it's going to happen to some people, unfortunately. That's just the nature of these things. I mean, look at Sonic fandom. Or don't look at Sonic fandom. But it's just... It's one of those things where I think we as DK fans, we sort of carry that weight a little bit harder given the state of the franchise and the discourse around the franchise over the last 20 plus years. And if at a baseline level, we just get regular Donkey Kong games again, where we don't have these enormous gaps in the chronology, I think it will go a long way towards calming everything down a little bit. And we don't have to put all of our chips on every single game that comes out, because we know that there will be another game just around the corner, just around the bend. And maybe that game will have more of what you're looking for Donkey Kong. And am I naive? Am I just overly optimistic? Probably. But there's so many things to worry about in the world right now. I don't want Donkey Kong to have to be one of them. But thank you so much for the call.
Hey, this is Hibby Sloth. I thought I'd call in. It's been a while. It happened. Cannot believe it. We're finally getting a new 3D Donkey Kong game after over 25 years. 11 years since the last Donkey Kong Country game in general. It's crazy. I didn't have too much to say. I mostly wanted to call in and just kind of say thank you. I met my partner during the pandemic, and we love your new videos, love Kongversation. Both are big Donkey Kong fans, and I introduced them to your podcast when we met, and that was around the time you were talking about how Donkey Kong was supposed to have a game during the Switch era that got canceled. This was long before, it came out there that it was Vicarious Visions. And this was kind of like an end of an era, because we've been waiting since then, because, we trust your word, and we love your stuff. So it's crazy to finally see EPDDK be a real thing. I'm along for the ride. I am ecstatic. And I can't wait to be playing this in just a couple months if I can get my hands on a Switch too. I wish you guys both the best. You and Cam have a good one.
Well, thank you for the call, Hibby Sloth. Yeah, I really do feel like this is the end of an era. It's the end of this unexpected stroll through the wilderness that Donkey Kong fans have had for the better part of 11 years. And it's such a weird era because we've had so many things in the broader DKU to discuss. I mean, from the Rare Renaissance, from Rare Replay and Sea of Thieves getting announced, to Playtonic's formation, Ukulele and Impossible Lair, and then Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and the whole hype cycle around that, and getting King K. Rool and Banjo and Kazooie, and sort of the notion of the DKU validated in a Nintendo trailer. Like, I don't want to oversell that, like, it's just been this barren wasteland over the last 11 years. I know I make jokes about it, like, how do we keep the conversation going? We had a lot to keep us going, and it was like a good time for a lot of that era. But as far as Donkey Kong, the mainline brand goes, yeah, it's been a weird time period, especially having that kind of inside knowledge, that scoop of like what's going on with Donkey Kong, what's holding things up. Has Nintendo forsaken Donkey Kong? And having to kind of communicate to everyone that no, there's lots of stuff in the works. It's just taking forever. And I think the pandemic probably threw a wrench in everything as well. We'll never know to the extent how much that slowed everything down, but it definitely did have a sizable impact on the industry as a whole.
Yeah, it's honestly weird to look back and, as with everything, just realize how long this cycle has been. And just how, like, the weight of everything that's happened since.
I mean, speaking to one of our earlier calls, they said, it's been half their life waiting for this game, which,
yeah
I mean, yeah, a wildly long time to wait for a game, especially looking back at the wait when I was a kid for a new Donkey Kong game. And oh my God, the length of time between Donkey Kong Country 2 and Donkey Kong Land 2. Oh my God. We had to wait 9 whole months. I referred to that when I was a kid as the Donkey Kong drought. The fact that we had to wait 9 months between Donkey Kong releases. Oh, the Donkey Kong drought of 1996. Oh.
Yeah. The Donkey Kong drought of my 2000s when I had to subsist on DK King of Swing, one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah, even the complete meltdown that the fandom experienced during the buyout era. And as we've relitigated on the conversation, there are good reasons why the fandom was melting down at the time. There were a lot of external pressures from gaming media and the discussions on message boards at the time where the Donkey Kong fandom felt like it was had to defend Donkey Kong,
Yeah, if things felt worse than they were just because we were in this situation where, we lost the primary developer of the series we loved, and it kind of became open season on them and everything they had ever made at the same time.
Yeah.
In the gaming press and in the community, so it was just kind of this, well, wait, no, I still want the games I love, and also they were good. What are you talking about?
Yeah. But then even then we had, the pay-on releases, we had Rare doing the GBA remakes, and then the DKU, the broader DKU was still humming along strong, even if that led to, initial disappointments like nuts and bolts. But yeah, like that wasn't a barren era at all. And it kind of seems ludicrous going back without the benefit of having lived it and knowing what kind of like wild arguments we had to endure then. But I am excited because we are entering a new era. This is a new chapter in the annals of the DKU, and feels good. It feels good to be out of this kind of stagnation, this post-pandemic, post-2019, like what the hell is happening, just subsisting on Sea of Thieves, seasonal updates, and waiting for Playtonic to announce, their next game, and just hoping that some Nintendo Direct will provide something. And I mean, I was so thrilled when Returns HD was announced. I was like, yeah, I'll take it. Yeah. The second time they've re-released Returns. Sure. Great. Awesome. This is amazing. This will keep me content for a year or two. And it didn't have to. It only had to kind of carry that torch for a little under 4 months. So, yeah. All right. Thank you for the call. Let's play our 12th caller.
Hello, this is Chocolate Milk Drinker calling in again for the Donkey Kong Bananza Call Sack episode. First of all, before I say what I want to talk about, I know there's a lot of calls coming in for this episode, but hopefully this is listened to. And even if this doesn't get in the episode, I hope this is listened to. And I'd like to say just thank you guys for putting in our last call of the episode. It really made my day and for just put a big smile on my face. But anyways, Donkey Kong Bananza. I think I just mainly just want to think about, like, other Kongs appearing in this game, because, I mean, the gameplay, absolutely incredible. It looks amazing. The other Kongs, I think they're definitely in. I think the Kongs are definitely in the game. Diddy is definitely in here. I don't think he's gonna be playable. I think he might just be some, like, NPC. Maybe he might be like Luigi and, like, be like some sort of, like, new game plus. King K. Rool. I think King K. Rool is definitely in this game. I mean, the amount of imagery related to crocodiles and, like, all that jazz, like the crocodiles literally having, like, similar posture and stuff to just regular critters. Yeah, it's all I can really think about to mind. I don't really write these down. I just really just speak what's on my mind whenever I'm calling in. But yeah, that's all I gotta say about Donkey Kong Bananza. I hope I make it out of this episode. Even not, I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.
Well, thanks for the call, chocolate milk drinker. Yeah, I would be shocked. I feel like K-Rool has to be broached, as we said. I feel like he's going to come up, if he hasn't already come up. If the way we're reading Cranky's dialogue, or a lot of us are reading Cranky's dialogue, is accurate, I think, he's definitely going to be discussed. I would be shocked if Diddy didn't show up in some capacity, and I think also just the fact that those monkey miners seem to be a deliberate, like, spin on Diddy's design. I think keeping visually consistent with the design of the monkeys in the Donkey Kong series is not just like we're going to just completely invent our own type of monkey like the capuchins in Jungle Beat, which, I mean, a different type of monkey, sure, but like they're keeping these visually reminiscent of Diddy and to a lesser extent Dixie.
But they're also making them, like, different enough from what we understand Diddy to look like that I feel like that's a sign pointing to him being in it, because you want him to stand apart from them.
Yeah. So I think it bodes well for Diddy. I mean, even those miner hats that the monkeys are wearing, they seem to be very evocative of
They have
Diddy's
this, like, huge
hat.
bill that nothing except Diddy's hat really has.
Yeah. So I would be surprised if Diddy isn't in there in some capacity. This isn't like a Jungle Beat situation where it's just it becomes very apparent early on that we're not going to see anything. And
yeah.
I think even Miyamoto would regret completely, like, cutting off anything recognizable from Jungle Beat, because we saw with new play control Jungle Beat, they did go back and add barrel cannons at the very least. Like, let's at least try to keep this more tonally consistent or visually consistent with what came before. And by the time new play control Jungle Beat was being developed, I think, like, the plans were in motion for returns at Retro. So yeah, but I would think we were going to see more than just Donkey, Cranky, and Rambi as returning characters. And the fact that we've seen so little of the game thus far, like, we're trying to build all these opinions on the game from just the earliest teases. And I think it's a bit of a fallacy, but it's also what's fun of the hype cycle. Like, I'm not going to discourage it, because that is what makes a new game announcement so enjoyable to me, and what I've lamented lacking for so long, and why I'm honestly a little disappointed it's coming out as soon as it is, because I would have wanted to marinate in all of this just a little bit longer, really savor it. The one call who said this was coming out like 10 days before their birthday, most of the Donkey Kong games of the 90s came out right on or near my birthday, late November. So, like, I loved that feeling of getting a game announced in June and then spending the entire duration of my summer into early autumn through Halloween up to American Thanksgiving, US Thanksgiving, and like just spending that completely zeroed in laser focus on the upcoming Donkey Kong game. I was deprived of it with Diddy Kong Racing because Diddy Kong Racing they announced pretty late in the day, and that was like the shortest hype cycle I had experienced for a major DKU release. But yeah, like I'm just glad we're getting it at all, and obviously it's been in the works for a long time now, so why waste any time getting it out? They were just waiting for the Switch too.
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that it's not often I've had to deal with the situation. Actually, I don't think I've had to deal with the situation ever of getting a Donkey Kong game also having the question mark of will I be able to get the console in time to play the game when it comes out.
Oh yeah. It's gonna be tight. It's gonna be tight, and I'm gonna try to attempt to pre-order it on Thursday. But I'm already breaking out in hives. I'm hive wrestling over this situation because I wish we had until maybe November, just so we would have that buffer. And at the very least, it's not coming out at the beginning of June. Like, I'm willing to take the bullet. I'm willing to sacrifice getting to play Mario Kart World at launch if it means I can have Bonanza at launch. But it's still cutting it very close.
For sure. I am at least glad it's not day one.
Yeah, as cool as that would be from a optics perspective, like, oh my god, they're launching this with Donkey Kong. One, that's a lot of pressure, and two, it gives us a little bit more time as Donkey Kong diehards. I will play World eventually, but I have to play Bonanza day one, so... Alright. Call number 13, we're at a baker's dozen. Delicious.
Hi guys, it's me, Skips from Blue Sky. Yeah, I've been humoring Hyle's recent theory of how potentially the Kremling core or the Kremling source could be somehow something that Voidco or it's something with the plot of it, like the story of like Bonanza. Like I know like Hyle was recently talking about the Kremling source potentially being like a certain thing that's going on because this like specific like distinct color pattern that's like playing around like the entire game so far. Like you've seen it in like the promotional art, like around in the layers of the world so far in the game. And I'm curious because now I'm looking through like this footage of like what we have, and I'm kind of like believing that this could potentially happen because these guys apparently like they grew up with the original Donkey Kong Country, so they could possibly like be into the lore just as much as we can. But either way, if K. Rool's not in this game, it's not a big deal. We've been waiting for like 11 years for this game to come out. So yeah, have a good one, you guys.
Well, thank you for the call, Skips. Yeah, so this is kind of taken off a little bit, this theory. And obviously, as we already saw, I think Claire called in, didn't necessarily originate with me. I think we're all just stumbling upon this theory together. And it's a wild swing, because it's possible. Anything's possible. And yes, there's a lot of loving homages to like Donkey Kong Country in this. It's not just arcade references in this. We're getting the plasticky sheen palm trees in this, in these, like, we still don't know the context behind this Donkey Kong Country style 2D level or sub-level or whatever it is. So we got that. We have the naughty fossil. We have all the references to DK64. So yeah, like it is possible that the Kremling source, Crocodile Core, Kremling lore could be at the heart of all of this. I would be bewildered and blown away if they went that deep and almost esoteric with the story. But I mean, what a surreal moment that would be if that did turn out to be true. Like, I can't think of anything more surreal that would be as comparable with Banjo and Kazooie the reveal trailer for Smash and acknowledging the DKU, and it's, oh my God, they're like, we're being seen, or they're one of us or whatever. But yeah, you're right. Like, looking through some of this, it is kind of funny how there does seem to be a deliberate color motif that keeps popping up that does match the Kremlin source energies from the Lost World of DKC 2. I'm not going to say I believe it. I don't think I believe it. I don't want to go so hard in like chasing this notion that I will end up disappointing myself. But you know, it is possible. I'm not going to say it's not I'm not going to say it's impossible, because I would have thought a naughty fossil would have been impossible until I saw it with my own eyes, and it's like, okay, well, I would have thought that a return to the dithered plastic palm trees would have been impossible until I saw it in the trailer, and I recognized what I was seeing. I was like, whoa, that's a wild reference. That shows that they are paying attention to the aesthetics and the trappings of the Donkey Kong series. And like, in our reporting, we like said that this team apparently is made up of a lot of people who love the Donkey Kong series. There was genuine enthusiasm that they were going to get to work on Donkey Kong. And I don't think that was misplaced reporting.
Yeah, I've discussed before that it's a refreshing thing about this hype cycle is that I am so used to, with every little scrap of Donkey Kong content we get, or new game announcements that we've had over the last, well, over a decade, I suppose by now, of like measuring expectations of, okay, this is the reality of the development of this game, who's making it, the established pattern with what we've seen in their previous work, or what we've seen in the spin-offs, what Nintendo is like has in the like IP package for Donkey Kong of this is what we are currently using. And it's very refreshing for once to feel like I don't have to measure expectations. I can speculate, I can have wild ideas, I can be wrong, and it doesn't feel like I'm being ridiculous if I'm wrong about something. It just feels like I was having fun entertaining the thought.
Yeah. It definitely feels like anything is possible. And who knows how into the arcane DK lore that only obsessive weirdos like us and the people who listen to this show would know. I will say, like, it's possible that like Voidco are just the main villains, and I want to say I like the design of the 3 Voidco Kongs that we've seen. Just like removing any potentiality of K. Rool and his involvement. I know, like, people are saying like the leader of Voidco seems to be holding out a phone, where it looks like a banana phone. It could just be a trigger for his like weapon or whatever. But I used it for the thumbnail for this episode on YouTube and SoundCloud because I was like, all right, well, that looks like a phone. Sure, why not? But I like the way that they look like the other Kongs do. They look like recognizable primates. Like all Kong designs, the best Kong designs look like. I mean, Donkey Kong and his relations and friends are gorillas, Diddy, Dixie, monkeys. Lanky Kong is an orangutan. And with these 3, we've got what looks to be the leader is a little guy. We've called him like a goblin or imp or something, but I think he's a marmoset. That's what Jeff posited. And I was like, yeah, he looks like a marmoset. He definitely does look like a marmoset. We got the big burly guy with like the mining outfit. He looks like a baboon of some sort. And then we've got the sort of femme fatale Kong who looks like a spider monkey. And I just like that you can look at them and be like, yeah, I see recognizable primates in them. The best Donkey Kong characters are usually just elevated cartoony versions of the real animal kingdom. So I do like Voidco.
they really are like the exact thing I want from new developers taking on Donkey Kong, which is incorporating new ideas of their own that sit perfectly in sync alongside the stuff we've had for decades now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like any one of these guys, you put them next to like any Kong from DKC 1, 2, 3, like they totally fit. It's like I've like commented like in our Discords before about how I am so impressed that like the aforementioned like female spider monkey Kong that they've designed, she's so like different in sensibilities from Candy Kong, but if you put her right next to her, there'd be no mistaking they're part of the same series. They're part of the same like design ethos.
Yeah, and with like all the discourse around Donkey Kong's new design, you look at like those characters, and they do very much, in my opinion, feel like Rare characters. Just it's been how long since we've seen Rare develop new characters for the DK series? I mean, what, Bachelor Bear was the last one, so
yeah.
I do like the way they look, and I think that's kind of key to keeping the series healthy, is to be excited about new stuff, because we're not so afraid that we're going to lose the old stuff in the process. And you look at like what new characters post Rare have really endeared themselves to the fandom. Well, it's characters like Xananap from Jungle Climber. And part of the reason Xananap is so readily accepted is he's in a game full of returning characters, and he just feels like he's part of the family.
Yeah, and even as like an outside context, like strange alien creature, design-wise, he looks like a Banjo-Kazooie character.
Yeah, that's also another thing. Like, people keep saying how so many of the NPCs in this game, I know it was a Snake Fighter 64 said, reminded like them of Mario, but there's a lot of Banjo-Kazooie DNA in there. And we saw a lot of Banjo-Kazooie DNA in Super Mario Odyssey. Like, it's not just Donkey Kong Country that these younger devs are fans of. They're also fans of the Rare games from that era that aren't Donkey Kong. And so it's just kind of cool that we're getting so much cross-pollination from the DKU, and all that time we spent in the aughts arguing for the validity of these games, they're now being recognized by the devs because the generations have aged up, and we've had turnover, and now people are championing this stuff within the halls of Nintendo. So we don't really have to shoulder that weight quite as much as we did as fans anymore. All right. 3 more calls to take, Cameron. Let's go ahead and play call number 14.
Hi, it's forum user Mushroom Wings. Apologies if I sound a bit stilted. I wrote this down so I didn't drone on and on for hours as I regularly do about Donkey Kong in everyday life. But at least I'd be in light company. Hype for Bananza's in the air, and I have never been so excited for a game. I think the last time I was for Smash Ultimate, and that was mostly for King K. Rool, but regardless, the second I saw it, I seen the graphics. This had got to be an EPDB game that had been rumored for so many years. I gave up hope for your game ages ago, and to see one out after so long is such a relieving feeling that I must admit I do have my concerns. Seeing the reactions offered as DK Vine, and especially in regards to the monetary situation surrounding the Switch 2, doesn't really help that at all. I'm concerned if the game doesn't sell to Nintendo's expectations, it'll be another 11 years of nothing but ports and remasters. Which, one, I love a lot of the games they could be doing that for. I would kill to see Jungle Beat on with Switch motion controls. That'd be amazing. I do suppose the only comforts against the possibility is that they wouldn't have such a push for DK right now, and they especially would release the game before we do 3D Mario for the new console, if that were the case. I guess what I'm saying is, Hyle, Cam, do you ever wonder about that? About what would happen if the game doesn't do as well as they hope. I don't want us to get into another drought. It's so fun seeing the fandom just as we are now, and it's, I don't know, I can't describe the feeling. But I just feel like I've rambled enough, I'm sorry. It's late. Thank you for your time, and here's to the hopeful beginnings of the revitalization of the DK series of games.
Well, thank you for the call. Mushroom Wings, was it? I do have some concerns. It is early days in a new console, and it doesn't have the install base that the Switch 1 has. And, of course, I think we talk about the scars that the Donkey Kong fandom bears from the buyout era. I think Nintendo fandom at a larger capacity still has scars from the Wii U. And the kind of hand-wringing and flop sweat that came about with a Nintendo console that really wasn't doing well. And they turned things around with the Switch, but now we have the Switch 2. It's kind of pricey, and you've got a lot of economic uncertainty right now with the world, and oh no, like, how is this game gonna fare? And is everything riding on Donkey Kong's future with this game? And I do get those concerns. I don't think Nintendo is just going to abandon Donkey Kong, though. I don't think that's really going to be a worry going forward to the extent that it was maybe in the past. And part of that is also the circumstances behind the last route, why we had 11 years between Donkey Kong games. And it wasn't out of concern that Tropical Freeze didn't meet expectations, financially speaking. It was pretty quick turnaround from Tropical Freeze launching to a studio taking on Donkey Kong.
To be certain, I've worried about sales of Donkey Kong games in the past because I think back to during the buyout era, really bright spots in those years were Payon's games, King of Swing, Jungle Climber, and kind of Barrel Blast. But, I'm not gonna dwell on that one too much. But I remember at the time with those first two, I really loved those games. DK Vine's community really liked them, but there was this frustration that they were pretty under-marketed for being like some of the only non-port Donkey Kong titles out at the time. And we kind of had this fear in the community of, well, Nintendo's not marketing these all that strongly. They're going to sell poorly, and that'll send the message that people don't care about Donkey Kong Country's characters and world, and it's going to be over. But obviously that wasn't the case. Donkey Kong Country was still selling really well on Game Boy Advance.
Right.
But I don't really have that sort of fear with this game. And part of that is Nintendo kind of, certainly for the past generation, has kind of treated their games and franchises differently than I think the way a lot of other publishers view games that they release, where there's a lot of emphasis on first week sales and immediate post-launch sales, because the expectation is this is the most eyes we're ever going to have on the thing we just released, and we're going to have to gradually keep dropping the price to incentivize people to buy it. So it is important we get as many people buying this out of the gate as we can. And we saw that happen with DKU adjacent game Mario Plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, where Ubisoft reported that they were disappointed in the initial sales of the game, even though it sold wildly pretty well. And I thought, well, of course, because people know it's going to drop in price very quickly if they just wait on it.
Yeah.
A lot of Nintendo's games that they publish, I think, are published with the understanding that they are evergreen titles. Like, Donkey Kong is a big enough name in just general video game culture that it's understood that this will be a game that will just be casually picked up throughout the life of the Switch 2, because people know the name Donkey Kong. It'll be a Christmas gift, it'll be birthday gifts, it'll be... I don't really know anything about video games, but I know the name Donkey Kong, and this looks like a game for kids that I could buy my nephews or nieces.
And yeah, like that evergreen, it's going to be an evergreen title when people eventually get a Switch 2. And they'll look for what games to pick up. I'm sure this game is going to be critically lauded, by the way. Like, I don't foresee any circumstance where there's going to be even the manufactured backlash that Tropical Freeze had, where people maybe wrote harsher reviews about it just based on what it wasn't, or as some part of some sort of lower C culture war within Nintendo fandom. Like, I think this game is going to get pretty high marks across the board, given the pedigree behind the team. And I think that, like, whether or not the Switch 2 is financially successful at launch will not impede this game's success. Like, I think this game will continue to sell throughout the Switch 2's lifespan, and I think Nintendo has big enough plans for Donkey Kong that they wouldn't throw in the towel if this game falls under some sort of hoped-for criteria sales-wise at first.
And I think it's evident with Tropical Freeze getting re-released for the Switch that Nintendo has the perspective to not go, well, the numbers on our console are low, and the numbers on this game are low, therefore the game is obviously the problem, and we shouldn't make more of this game.
Right, exactly, yeah. So, Donkey Kong, I think Donkey Kong is safe. I do. I think Donkey Kong is safer now than he's been in over 20 years. But I don't think Donkey Kong is ever in danger either. I think that's a fallacy to think that. I think it's looking at circumstances and sort of misunderstanding what was happening. It wasn't for lack of trying that we went 11 years without a new standalone Donkey Kong game. And in that time, they made sure Donkey Kong kept in the public's eye. Tropical Freeze got re-released. We got Donkey Kong Adventure for Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. There was a heavy emphasis during Smash. There was like all this stuff going up to the Super Mario Brothers movie, which has also brought in tons of new fans to Donkey Kong. All these kids who were introduced to Donkey Kong via the Super Mario Brothers movie and are going to be so excited to play Bananza when they finally get a Switch 2. I'm not worried, really. I mean, obviously that concern is always there, but I feel like we have a lot going for us, and a lot of things would have to go wrong for this game to be a financial failure. All right, let's play our 15th and penultimate call.
Hey, this is Kyle. I just wanted to share some thoughts on Bananza, but it's probably going to be more meta regarding you guys' thoughts, since I cannot afford a Switch at the moment, and I honestly refuse to buy it unless they drop the price. I was mainly wondering a few things. Kyle said, when talking about returns, he got annoyed at all the Mario references in a DK game at the expense of other stuff, but he was fine with the retro games referencing Metroid Prime, since Retro developed those games. How would references to Mario work, given this is apparently the Mario Odyssey team? Would you be fine with that, or would you be annoyed with that?
Well, thank you for the call, Kyle. I would be fine with it because it would be more understandable to me, given the team and the legacy. We've already seen plenty of New Donk City references in Bananza, and I completely get that. I think context is important as well.
I think there's also the matter of Mario references in this game feels like a fair trade because we have New Donk City from the
Yes.
same team.
Yeah.
It's reminiscent of how like Rare would have references back and forth to like Banjo and DK and Conker, just sort of all mixed in with their N64 library.
Or even looking outside of the Diddy Kong Racing connections, the DKU, Killer Instinct was referenced in DKC2. And I'm fine with that, because, yeah, I get it. Just like I was fine with the Metroid references in Returns and Tropical Freeze. I expect that. I'm cool with that. Where I think I really got annoyed with some of the Easter eggs in, especially Tropical Freeze, was they were going out of their way to reference Mario and going out of their way not to reference Donkey Kong.
That really is the core of the issue, I think, is that the Mario references would have been not a big deal in the slightest if the Donkey Kong references were more substantial.
And, I mean, we got the gramophone in the one level, and we got the obvious arcade-era references, but aside from the actual callbacks to Returns itself, it always just felt like there was this fear of referencing Donkey Kong Country in a Donkey Kong Country game that never really sat right with me. And again, I love those two games. Do not get me wrong. Do not misconstrue my words. Do not post comments in the YouTube upload of this saying that we hate everything that's not Rare. That's not true. But as a Donkey Kong fan, I want the Donkey Kong series to be celebrated in Donkey Kong games. And that's why Bananza is winning me over, because we have gotten more references and more loving nods to all eras of Donkey Kong in just the little sliver of stuff we've seen from Bananza thus far. And yeah, if they're going to reference Mario, like so far the Mario references we've seen are in direct relation to New Donk City, which was a tribute to Donkey Kong in a 3D Mario game shortly after they kind of cottoned on to the fact that they were going to get to develop Donkey Kong. That was kind of like their first primal scream of, oh my God, Donkey Kong! And I'm not worried about it. Like, yeah, reference Mario where it's appropriate, because I don't feel like it's going to be in place of something else.
And it's certainly a different... It's apples and oranges when the references are to, like, DK Arcade... Like, the quote-unquote Mario references are references to DK Arcade or a Donkey Kong-themed city in a 3D Mario, versus the tanks from Super Mario Bros. 3 showing up in a fruit jungle.
Why was one of Bowser's tanks in the middle of this fruit juice factory? Like, what? What are we doing here? Oh, anyway, I love Tropical Freeze. It's a great game. Thank you for the call. All right, we have one more call to play. And then we also have a question from Blue Sky that I said I would read on air from somebody who didn't want to call in but wanted the question asked. So we'll address that as well. But let's play our last audible message.
Hey, this is Cronax, attempting to call in for the big fat Donkey Kong Bananza call sack. And I figure that my best chance of getting in is trying to analyze something that's been like overlooked, so I'm a bit more unique. So I want to talk about this bat enemy that we've only seen the glimpse of. So during like the big sort of set piece thing at the beginning of the game, we see like all Voidco, we see some Crocoids, and they're causing Ingot Isle to be, crashed underground. But there's also this like bat-looking enemy. It's got these like uneven eyes, which is maybe hinting towards something. And its like wings and body are made out of this weird, shiny, golden material. It's sort of reminiscent of some of the like regular enemies, but it's the only one that we've seen. I don't think this. Unless I'm really missing something, we've just seen like other kinds of enemies. Not really, like the only flying enemy is the Buzzoid, and that's more of an insect type thing. But it's obviously not being grouped with Voidco proper. It's not like their weird fourth member of their cast or anything. So it could just be a regular enemy that we haven't seen yet, but maybe there's something more about that. Who knows? And I guess I'll end off with a question. A while ago, like this was last year, I think, there was a promise that there was going to be a call sack for people's top 10 favorite Donkey Kong games. And I'm wondering if that's still going to happen or not, or if it's been too much time. Thank you for taking the call.
Well, thank you for the call. We came full circle, Cameron, with our calls. Uh, thank you for the call. Please do me a favor. Next time you call in, please spell your name so I can get the exact pronunciation right next time around. But we'll probably do that call sec eventually. Obviously, circumstances threw us a curveball. We have a brand new Donkey Kong game to discuss, and not a lot of time in the hype cycle to really spend on it. So a lot of the Kongversation season 13 has kind of been torn up and thrown asunder for the time being. We will work in nostalgic episodes. We will work in episodes that I had planned, like the return of the DKU draft. We'll do that again. But obviously, a lot of the schedule has been shifted and pushed back so we can spend time discussing Bananza and, to a lesser extent, Mario Kart World. As far as your observation about this like bat-like enemy, well, I think we've only seen a little bit of the game. We've only seen really some gameplay of the Lagoon layer, and of course Ingot Isle as well. And we also don't really know the extent of the enemies or later worlds or context behind much of this game. So, yeah, your guess is as good as mine, but I think like it's a fallacy to think that we know what we're talking about when it comes to Donkey Kong Bananza, because we still know so little.
It really took me a while to parse what this bat thing in the background was, like, even through, like, several watch-throughs trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a while to even register that it's a bat because of the lighting kind of making the mask hard to see.
Yeah.
Like, in my initial, like, in the moment, like, what the hell is that? Trying to parse it, my brain went to, of all things, a big man from Splatoon being, like, a big, inky manta ray, but with a mask. But, yeah, I imagine, given in this shot that like the main Void Code trio are surrounded by a bunch of other like recurring like enemy types like the crocoids.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that they're going to be like probably like a minor enemy or mid boss type of figure rather than like somebody on the level of Little Monkey with the Phone ? But that's kind of the exciting thing about what, again, the refrain that we've been having with this. It's fun to not know.
Yeah, I remember like DKC3 got announced, and like in Nintendo Power, reading the blurb about Donkey Kong Country 3, and the Kremlings have a new leader named Chaos. And oh, my mind wandered what Chaos could be. I was picturing this big like Generalissimo or something. Like, I was ultimately very disappointed with what Chaos actually was, especially when like the twist upon the twist. That was an instance, believe it or not, where I was disappointed that K. Rool was the surprise villain of the game, because at that point, I wasn't so desperate for K. Rool. K. Rool, I felt like, oh, he's kind of played out. Let's give K. Rool a break until Donkey Kong's N64 game. Let's do something different for this final outing on the Super Nintendo. So, yeah, I was kind of let down by the reveal of Chaos, but I spent several months speculating about what Chaos could be and having all these vivid images conjured up in my head. And yeah, he was just a big dumb robot with Donkey and Diddy stuffed inside. All right. Well, as I said, we have a question from Blue Sky. Be sure to follow DK Vine on Blue Sky. And maybe you won't have to call in the hotline either. This is from Thirsty Pocket. Great name. I just want to ask if DK Vine has ever considered taking a look at potential differences in the lore of the series and public perception in Japanese regions, since DK is going to be a Japanese-developed series from here on out, presumably, and how that might impact the games even if more rare material was brought into the picture. Yeah, it's something that I've been considering since learning that Donkey Kong was going to be developed internally at EPD. I don't think it's as big of a deal as it might have been 20 years ago, because we are a much smaller world now. Translating each other is easier than it's ever been before, even if you don't speak the language. And I feel like a lot of the cultural barriers that were once up have kind of fallen by the wayside. There are a lot of ills that the extremely online, interconnected world that we've lived in have brought. The internet hasn't been a force for good in a lot of ways, but I will always be thankful that it's made me feel more connected to the wider world. And I feel a lot less isolated and insular than I used to be. And I don't think there are as many differences between the Japanese fandom and the Western fandom as one would expect anymore. And I've seen this just from conversing with Japanese fans of not only Donkey Kong, but of the DKU. DKU fans exist in Japan, which was one of the most pleasantly delightful discoveries from my time on the former Twitter, was connecting with fans in Japan. And obviously there were minute differences back in the day. And there are always going to be variances like level names, certain character names. Dinky Kong. He's Dinky Kong in Japan. But I'm okay with that, you know? And because of a mistranslation in Dixie's notes in Donkey Konga 2, I like to think that Dinky is his legal name. And that's how we reconcile the two canons, is he's legally Dinky and Kitty is a nickname.
It's certainly something I'd be interested to have more cultural context on, just because I find that sort of thing fascinating. But it's not really a cause for concern for me, especially considering there have been instances in the past where something has been kind of askew in a Donkey Kong game or a DKU game where we've kind of tilted our heads and gone, huh, that's not right. And it was attributed to like a Japanese like cultural misunderstanding or like an alleged like way that the lore in Japan was different than how it was presented in the US. And more often than not, no, it was just a localization issue or a weird quirk of the specific development circumstance of that title.
Right.
It wasn't a generalization.
The misnomer that in Japan they believe Captain K. Rool is K. Rool's brother, that came about because of a Smash Brothers Brawl trophy.
Yeah, that sure doesn't hold water when one of his primary moves in Smash Brothers is whipping out that hat.
Right. And now that like the fandom is within Nintendo, we've got ringers inside the house. So I'm not really worried about any cultural differences. And I think that, like, obviously they're going to localize some things that, you know, don't sync up well. Like, just in the references alone that we've seen in Bananza, like, everything is pretty consistent thus far.
Yeah, as we've gone on about at length, like, I am in awe of how well Cranky is written in what we've seen. The best writing since DK64 for that character.
Absolutely. It's a return to form for Cranky. And I think like the biggest cultural divide in the Donkey Kong fandom is probably the most irrelevant now, and that's Jungle Beat's story versus Jungle Beat's story in the West, which was non-existent in the West. So it's whatever. But yeah, like, it would be an interesting episode for sure. I would also feel like I would have to do way more research on it than I have right now. I can't really speak to any great authority, and I would want to actually talk with Japanese fans and get like a better understanding of their lived experience before I would even feel qualified. And even then, I don't know if I would feel comfortable enough like saying anything definitive for them, you know?
For sure. And just as an aside to your point, everybody listening to this, do yourself a favor and look up like rare, like shared universe fan art from Japanese artists. It is delightful.
It is. It really, really is. Yeah. So like the biggest cultural divide, honestly, beyond Jungle Beat, is still of that era, but it's the Donkey Konga track listings. Because, you know, Japanese fandom, they have a much better track listing for Donkey Konga than we got in the West. And even between the West, Europe got a way better track listing than the Americas.
I will always be struck by, like, this goes to show you how different, like, presentation can, how big a difference presentation can make. This wasn't even a Japanese example, but our friends at Transparency had mentioned on a live stream them being surprised that Donkey Konga had such a negative reception in the US, and wondering why that was the case. And then both of them took a look at our track list and realized how much worse it was than what they received.
Right. Yeah. And that context is important when I rail against Donkey Konga or Donkey Konga 2. Gonna play Donkey Konga 3, so, you know, I don't know what abomination of a track listing they would have stuck us with there. But you know what? That's a different era now. That's in the past. And we can really view the transgressions of Donkey Konga as just all the small things. True care, truth brings. I'll take one lift. Your ride. Best trip. Always, I know. You'll be at my show. Watching. Waiting. Commiserating. Say it ain't so. I will not go.
Bingo.
Donkey Kong!
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.